The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Kang Do-hyun stepped onto the platform. He was not what they expected. The Galactic Academy of Interspecies Relations had prepared for his arrival for months. They had read the reports. They had studied the warnings. They knew that Earth was a Class 12 Deathworld, a planet so dangerous that most species could not survive there for even a single day. They knew that humans were apex predators, evolved through millions of years of violence, disease, and environmental chaos. But nobody had told them that the human would be smiling. Do-hyun stood in the center of the arrival platform, wearing the standard Academy uniform. It had been specially made for him, designed to fit his dense muscular frame. His body was built for a world with gravity 3 times stronger than the Academy's artificial environment. His bones were thick. His muscles were compact and powerful. His dark eyes moved across the crowd with a calm, steady gaze that made several students step backward. And yet, his lips were curved upward in a gentle expression. He looked almost friendly. The students who had gathered to watch his arrival were a mix of different species. The Vallarans were tall beings made of living crystal, their bodies catching the light and creating small rainbows wherever they stood. The Nimbus were clouds of colored gas, floating above the ground and communicating through vibrations in the air. The Ethori had 6 limbs and scales that changed color with their emotions, and right now, most of them had turned a nervous shade of gray. None of them approached the human dot in the faculty tower above the platform. Professor Helix watched through a window. She was not a physical being. She was made of pure thought energy, a serpentine form that glowed with soft blue light. She had taught at the Academy for over 200 years, and she had seen many strange students, but she had never seen a human from Earth. So they finally sent one, she said to herself. After all these years of refusing our invitations, they send us a soldier. She had read his file. Parts of it were classified, locked behind security codes that even she could not access. His age was listed as 22 standard cycles. His occupation before the Academy was listed simply as military service. But there were gaps in his history, blank spaces where information should have been .professor. Helix did not like mysteries she could not solve down on the platform. A young Etheri student named Tivik was trying to get a better view of the human. Tivik was small for their species, with bright orange scales that marked them as barely an adult. They had heard stories about humans their entire life. Stories about creatures that could run for hours without stopping. Stories about beings that hunted the largest animals on their planet for sport. Stories about a species so violent that they had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. Tivik wanted to see if the stories were true. They pushed forward through the crowd, holding their datapad close to their chest. But in their excitement, they stumbled. The datapad slipped from their grip and fell toward the ground. It never hit the floor. Do-hyun moved. One moment he was standing still, several meters away. The next moment, he was right in front of Tivik, the datapad held gently in his hand. He had caught it before anyone even saw him move. The crowd went silent. Tivik's scales turned white with fear. They had not seen the human move. Their eyes could not track something that fast. Their brain could not process what had just happened. "Here you go," Do-hyun said. His voice was warm and calm, and he spoke perfect Galactic common with only a slight accent. "You should be more careful. These devices are expensive." He held out the datapad with both hands, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he was trying not to frighten a small animal. Tivik took the device with trembling limbs. "Thank you," they whispered. Do-hyun smiled again. "No problem." He turned and walked toward the main building, leaving the stunned crowd behind. His footsteps were almost silent despite his heavy frame. He moved like a predator, trying very hard to seem harmless. Yunari was waiting for him at the entrance to the dormitory building. She was his assigned guide, a fellow human who had been at the academy for 3 years. But Nari was different from Do-yeon. She had been born on Europa, a moon that had been terraformed by human colonists centuries ago. The gravity there was weak. The environment was controlled and safe. She had never set foot on Earth. She was also terrified of the man standing in front of her. "You are Kang Do-yeon?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "That is me," he confirmed. "And you must be Nari. Thank you for meeting me." He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect from old Earth culture. Nari found herself bowing back automatically. "I am supposed to show you around the academy," she said. "Help you adjust to life here. I appreciate that." They walked together through the corridors. Other students moved out of their way, pressing themselves against the walls to give the human as much space as possible. Do-hyun seemed not to notice, or perhaps he was simply used to it. "Can I ask you something?" Nari said after a long silence. "Of course. You are from Earth, the actual planet, the original homeworld." "I was born in Bizen," Do-hyun said. "It is a city by the ocean. Very beautiful. Is it true what they say about your planet?" "That depends on what they say." Nari hesitated. "They say your kind hunted giant animals for fun. They say you can run for hours without rest. They say your bodies can heal themselves without medical help. They say your planet is covered in poison and fire and creatures that want to kill everything." Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed softly. It was a genuine sound, full of warmth. "Earth is flowers too," he said. "And music. And food that would make you cry with happiness. We write poetry. We paint pictures. We tell stories to our children at night to help them sleep." He looked at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "We are more than just survivors, Nari. We are also dreamers." Nari did not know what to say to that. They reached his assigned room. It was small and simple, with a bed designed for his Earth standard weight and a window that looked out at the stars. "Thank you for the tour," Do-hyun said. "I look forward to my time here. Why did you come?" Nari asked suddenly. "Earth has refused to participate in the exchange program for decades." "Why now? Why you?" Do-hyun paused at the doorway. His smile faded slightly, and for just a moment, Nari saw something old and tired in his eyes. "Because someone needs to show the galaxy that we are not monsters," he said quietly. "That we can be friends. That we can be trusted." He closed the door gently behind him. Nari stood in the hallway for a long time, thinking about his words. She had lived among aliens her entire life. She had always thought of herself as the bridge between worlds. But now she wondered if she had ever truly understood what it meant to be human. In the shadows of a nearby corridor, a cloaked figure watched the exchange. Their fingers moved across a hidden communicator, sending an encrypted message to a ship waiting far beyond the Vendée Academy's sensors. The message was simple. The human operative has arrived. Phase 1 begins. The game had started, and Kang Do-yeon did not even know he was a piece on the board. 3 weeks passed, and the academy slowly grew used to its strange new student. Kang Do-yeon attended every class. He sat in the back row, his uniform always clean and pressed, his posture relaxed but attentive. He took notes on a small tablet. He asked thoughtful questions. He thanked his professors after every lesson. He was, by all appearances, a perfect student. And yet, nobody could forget what he was. Lim Sora noticed this more than most. She was a human xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. She had come to the academy to conduct research, but she found herself spending more and more time watching. She watched how the Valoran students angled their crystal bodies away from him, as if afraid he might shatter them with a touch. She watched how the Nimbus students compressed their gas forms into tight balls whenever he walked past, making themselves as small as possible. She watched how even Professor Helix, a being of pure thought, seemed to dim slightly in his presence. The fear was everywhere. It filled every room he entered. It followed him like a shadow, but Doyen never seemed to notice. Or perhaps Sora thought. He had simply learned to ignore it. The incident happened during Practical Combat Theory class. It was an unusual class for a school that prided itself on peaceful relations between species. But the Academy believed that understanding violence was necessary for preventing it. The students studied warfare from a purely academic perspective, analyzing battles and strategies without ever engaging in actual combat. The instructor was an ethery named Korvac. He was old for his species, with faded gray scales and 3 missing limbs that had been replaced with mechanical prosthetics. He had been a warrior once, before he chose the path of teaching. Today, he was demonstrating theoretical defensive positions using training drones. The drones were small flying machines, about the size of a human head. They were programmed to simulate attacks without causing real harm. Their weapons were set to stun, not kill. At least, they were supposed to be. The malfunction happened without warning. One moment, Korvac was explaining the concept of strategic retreat. The next moment, the training system sparked and crackled, and 3 drones shot into the air with their weapons fully powered. The classroom erupted into chaos. Students screamed and ran for the exits. Valoran bodies crashed into each other, their crystal forms ringing like bells. Nimbus students scattered in all directions, their gaseous bodies spreading thin with panic. Ethery students scrambled over desks and chairs, their 6 limbs tangling together. The drones did not care. They began firing at anything that moved. Sora pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. She saw a stun bolt hit a Valoran student, sending cracks spreading across their crystalline chest. She saw another bolt narrowly miss a cluster of Nimbus students. She saw Korvac trying to shut down the system, his mechanical limbs moving frantically across the control panel. And then she saw Doyen. He was not running. He was not hiding. He was walking calmly toward the center of the arena, directly into the path of the malfunctioning drones. What is he doing? Someone whispered. The first drone turned toward him and fired. Doyen sidestepped. The movement was small, almost casual. The stun bolt passed within centimeters of his chest and hit the wall behind him. He did not flinch. He did not even seem concerned. The second drone flew at him, its weapons charging for another shot. Dohyun reached up and caught it out of the air. His hand closed around its metal body, and the sound of crushing metal filled the room. Sparks flew. Circuits crackled. He set the broken machine down gently, as if placing a sleeping child in a bed. The third drone hesitated. Its targeting system seemed confused. It had been programmed to identify threats based on fear responses. Elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, stress hormones, signs of prey. But Doyen showed none of these signs. His heart beat slowly and steadily. His breathing was calm. His body chemistry was completely relaxed. He was not afraid. He had never been afraid. He looked at the drone. Just looked at it, with those dark, patient eyes. The drone powered down and fell to the floor. Silence filled the arena. 200 students stared at the human standing amidst the wreckage. His uniform was slightly dusty, but otherwise, he looked exactly the same as he had before the attack. "Professor Korvac," he said politely, "I believe there was a malfunction. Should I notify maintenance?" Nobody answered. Nobody could speak. Later that night, Nari found Dohyun in the dormitory common room. He was sitting by the window, reading something on his tablet. He looked peaceful, almost content. "What are you?" she demanded. He looked up at her with mild surprise. "I am a student. The same as you." "I am human too," Nari said. I have the same DNA as you, but I could never do what you did today. I could not move that fast. I could not stay that calm. Do-hyun set down his tablet. You were raised in weak gravity. Your muscles and reflexes adapted to a gentler environment. It is not a flaw, Nari. It is simply a difference. That is not an answer. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. I was a soldier, he said. Before the academy, before the exchange program. I served in places that did not appear on any official maps. I did things that I am not proud of. What kind of things? The kind that teach you how to stay calm when machines are trying to kill you. Nari sat down across from him. Why are you here? Why did they send a soldier to a school? Because right now, the galaxy thinks humans are monsters. They think we are violent and dangerous and untrustworthy. They think we only know how to destroy. He looked out the window at the distant stars. Someone needs to show them that we also know how to learn. That we can be students and friends and partners. And you think you can do that? After what happened today? Today I protected people. I stopped the threat without hurting anyone. I used the violence inside me to create safety instead of destruction. He smiled slightly. That is what humans have always done, Nari. We take the darkness our world gave us, and we choose what to do with it. Nari did not know how to respond to that dot in her laboratory that night. Sora reviewed the security footage from the incident. She watched Do-hyun's movements frame by frame, studying his speed and precision. She analyzed his biometric readings during the attack. What she found disturbed her deeply. His heart rate had not increased at all. His adrenaline levels had remained completely flat. His stress markers had shown no change whatsoever. He had not fought to survive. He had fought because it was easy. Because stopping 3 combat drones was no more difficult for him than catching a falling datapad. Sora closed her computer and stared at the ceiling. For a long time, she had studied many dangerous creatures in her career. She had encountered predators from a dozen different worlds. But she had never seen anything quite like Kang Do-hyun. And somewhere in the Academy's administration wing, someone was deleting portions of the security footage. Someone was erasing the evidence of a hidden signal that had activated the drones in the first place. The attack had not been an accident. It had been a test, and Do-hyun had passed. 2 months after the drone incident, something unexpected happened. Kang Do-hyun became popular. It did not happen all at once. It started with small things, little moments that added up over time. Tivik, the young ethery who had dropped their datapad on the first day, discovered that Do-hyun was excellent at reaching high shelves. The Academy's libraries were designed for species much taller than Tivik, and they often struggled to access the materials they needed. Do-hyun noticed this one afternoon and offered to help. You do not have to, Tivik said nervously. I know, Do-hyun replied, but I want to. From that day forward, Tivik followed him around like a small 6-limbed shadow. They asked him endless questions about Earth. What did the sky look like? What did the ocean smell like? What sounds did birds make? Do-hyun answered every question with patience and warmth. He described sunsets over the Pacific Ocean. He explained the feeling of rain on bare skin. He talked about the sound of wind moving through forests. Tivik's scales turned bright yellow whenever he spoke. It was the color of joy. Professor Helix discovered that her thought projections worked better when Do-hyun was nearby. Her species communicated through pure mental energy, and sometimes their signals became scattered and weak. But Do-hyun's brain was unusually dense, a result of evolving on a high-gravity world. His neural architecture created a kind of anchor that helped stabilize her projections. Fascinating, she said to him one day after class. Your presence actually makes me clearer, more focused. Happy to help, he said with that familiar smile. Even the Valoran students began to warm to him after he helped one of them repair a crack in their crystalline body. Valarans healed slowly, and the process required precise application of heat and pressure. Dahyun had learned the technique from a medical database and spent 3 hours carefully sealing the wound. "Why would you do this for me?" the Valaran asked afterward. "Your species is supposed to be aggressive, dangerous. My species invented medicine because we did not want to watch each other suffer," Dahyun said. "Being dangerous does not mean we enjoy hurting people. It means we are very motivated to protect the things we care about." But the real turning point came during the Cultural Exchange Festival. Every year, the Academy hosted an event where students from different worlds could share their cultures with each other. There were displays of art, demonstrations of technology, and presentations about history and tradition. Duhayan volunteered to represent Earth. The other students expected weapons. They expected demonstrations of combat techniques. They expected something that would confirm their fears about the violent Deathworld species. Instead, Dahyun set up a simple booth with a cooking station. He made ramen. The smell filled the entire courtyard within minutes. It was rich and savory, with hints of salt and spice, and something deeply satisfying that most alien species had never experienced before. Food on Earth had evolved alongside its dangerous predators. Humans had learned to create flavors that triggered pleasure responses in the brain. Combinations of taste and texture that made eating a joyful experience rather than just a chase. Necessity. The line for Dohyun's booth stretched across the English. The entire festival grounds. Nimbus students modified their intake systems to process solid food for the first time. The Lauren students discovered that they could absorb the broth through their crystalline surfaces. Ethori students used all 6 limbs to hold bowls and chopsticks, slurping noodles with enthusiastic abandon. "This is incredible," one Nimbus student said, their gaseous form pulsing with pleasure. "Your planet tried to kill your ancestors for millions of years, and you responded by inventing this?" "We responded by inventing everything," Dohyun said, refilling their bowl. "Art, music, stories, food. The universe was cruel to us, so we created beauty to fight back." By the end of the festival, Dohyun was surrounded by dozens of aliens asking questions about Earth cuisine. What else did humans eat? How did they learn to cook? Could he teach them to make more dishes? For the first time since his arrival, the Academy felt like a home, but not everyone was happy about this development. Far from the Academy, in a military command center hidden among the stars, Admiral Vekris watched the reports with growing anger. He was an Etheri of the highest warrior caste, his scales permanently darkened by decades of combat. He had spent his entire career maintaining the galaxy's fear of Deathworld species. That fear was useful. It kept the Etheri military powerful. It justified their massive fleet. It allowed them to position themselves as the only species capable of containing the threat from worlds like Earth. If humans became accepted, if they were seen as potential allies rather than dangerous beasts, everything would change. "The integration is succeeding," his aide reported. "The human has made significant social connections. His popularity is growing rapidly." "Then, we need to remind everyone what humans really are," Vekris said coldly. "We need an incident, something that cannot be ignored." Meanwhile, Sora had been investigating the drone malfunction. She had spent weeks digging through maintenance logs and security records, searching for answers. What she found was troubling. The malfunction had not been random. Someone had altered the drone programming. Someone had deliberately increased their weapon power and disabled their safety protocols. And when she traced the authorization codes, she found that they led to a military communication channel that should not have existed within the Academy systems. Someone had attacked the school on purpose. Someone had wanted Do-hyun to react violently. She found him one night on the observation deck, staring at the distant point of light that was Earth's sun. "You know, do you not?" she said quietly. "You know that someone is trying to set you up." Do-hyun did not seem surprised by her presence. "I have known since the first week. There are people who need me to fail. People who need humanity to remain the monster in the dark. Why have you not done anything about it?" "Because right now, I am just a student. I make friends. I cook food. I help people with their problems." He turned to face her. "The moment I start investigating, I become the soldier again. And soldiers are easy to fear. So you are just going to wait? Let them make their move? I am going to be so relentlessly human that when they finally attack, everyone here will know I am not the threat." His smile was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "Whatever they throw at me, I can handle. I was forged on a world that spent 4 billion years trying to murder everything on it. And if people get hurt while you wait, they will not. Because I will always be faster. I will always be ready." His eyes met hers, and for a moment, she saw something ancient and dangerous looking back at her. The Ethori military thinks they are predators. They think they understand violence. But they have forgotten something important. What is that? They have never actually met a real one. Sora shivered despite herself. She had spent months watching this man smile and cook and help his classmates with their homework. She had almost forgotten what he truly was. Now she remembered. Somewhere in the academy, hidden forces were preparing their next move. They had failed to make Do-hyun look like a monster during the drone incident. They would not fail again, and Do-hyun knew they were coming. He simply smiled and waited, like a hunter who had all the patience in the world. 6 months into the academic year, the conspiracy finally struck dot. It began with an explosion. The blast tore through the science wing early in the morning, when most students were still sleeping. Glass shattered. Walls cracked. Equipment worth millions of credits was destroyed in an instant. 3 Valoran students were caught in the blast. Their crystalline bodies were cracked and flickering, their inner light dimming with each passing moment. A young Nimbus researcher named Kel was in critical condition, their gaseous form destabilizing and threatening to scatter completely. Medical teams rushed to the scene. Security forces sealed off the building. The entire academy went into emergency lockdown, and in the wreckage, investigators found the evidence: human DNA, human explosive compounds, and a single identification tag bearing the name Kang Do-hyun. Within hours, the academy transformed. Students who had shared meals with Do-hyun looked at him with renewed terror. Friends who had laughed at his jokes now refused to meet his eyes. Tivik, who had followed him around for months, stood frozen in the hallway, their scales cycling through colors of fear and confusion. Security officers came for Do-hyun during his morning class. They surrounded him with weapons drawn, their hands shaking visibly. Do-hyun looked at them with that same calm expression he always wore. "I understand," he said quietly. "I will come with you." He did not resist. He did not argue. He simply stood up and walked with them to the detention center, his hands clasped peacefully behind his back. The emergency tribunal was held that same afternoon. The Academy's Council of Elders sat in judgment, their faces grim. Director Hask, the Ethori Chief of Security, presented the evidence with barely concealed satisfaction. "The explosive residue matches compounds only found on Earth," he said. "The DNA at the scene belongs to the accused. His identification tag was recovered from the wreckage. The evidence is overwhelming." Nari stood in the gallery, her fists clenched at her sides. "This is wrong," she muttered. "This is completely wrong." Sora sat beside her, her mind racing through everything she had learned. The timing was too convenient. The evidence was too perfect. Someone had planned this very carefully. Do-yoon sat in the accused chair, wearing simple detention clothes instead of his academy uniform. For the first time since his arrival, he looked almost ordinary. Just a young man facing judgment. But his smile remained. That same steady, unshakable smile. "This is absurd," Nari suddenly shouted, unable to contain herself any longer. Dahan was in class all day. Dozens of students saw him. He could not have planted that bomb. Director Hask turned toward her with cold eyes. The explosive was planted earlier, perhaps during the night. And who better to move unseen than someone trained in human special operations? The gallery murmured in agreement. The fear was winning. "Director Hask," Do-hyun said calmly, "may I ask a question?" Hask's scales rippled with annoyance. "You may. Who benefits from this?" The chamber went silent. "Because it is certainly not me," Do-hyun continued, his voice steady and clear. "I came here to prove that Earth deserves a place in the galactic community. An attack on alien students destroys everything I have worked for. It turns me into exactly the monster everyone feared." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every council member. "So I ask again, who actually benefits from humanity looking like violent beasts?" Hask's scales turned a darker shade. "Are you accusing the Academy of conspiracy?" "I am accusing someone." Do-hyun's smile did not waver, but something in his eyes had changed. For the first time, the room saw what lurked beneath the friendly surface. "And I believe they are in this room right now." Before Hask could respond, Sora stood up. "I have evidence," she announced. "Evidence that the drone malfunctioned 2 months ago was not an accident. Evidence that someone deliberately sabotaged those machines to make the human look dangerous." The gallery exploded into noise. Council members spoke over each other. Director Hask's scales shifted rapidly through several colors. "This is ridiculous," he said. "The drone incident was investigated thoroughly. Then why were portions of the security footage deleted?" Sora pulled out a data tablet. "I have recovered the missing files. They show a hidden signal activating the drones remotely, a signal that came from a military communication channel." "She lies," Hask said quickly. "She is a human sympathizer trying to protect one of her own kind." "Then let us verify the evidence," Professor Helix said, her thought form pulsing with intensity. "I have a faster method." She turned toward Hask, her mental presence expanding to fill the room. "I can read minds, Director. You know this. Allow me to scan your thoughts and prove your innocence." Hask's scales went pale. "That is a violation of privacy." "I refuse. An innocent person would welcome the chance to be cleared of suspicion." I said no. Helix's form blazed brighter. "Then I will tell the council what I sense without a full scan. I sense guilt, Director. I sense fear of exposure. I sense that you did not plant the bomb yourself, but you knew it was going to happen. You allowed it." Chaos erupted. Council members shouted accusations. Security officers looked at each other in confusion, unsure who to trust. Hask tried to run. He made it 3 steps. Do-hyun was faster. He had always been faster. The Deathworld soldier moved like a ghost, crossing the entire chamber in less than a second. His hand closed around Hask's arm, and suddenly the director was on the ground, his limb locked in a grip that could shatter stone. But Do-hyun did not break anything. He did not hurt the Ithori at all. He simply held him in place, his voice calm and controlled. "I could kill you in 17 different ways right now," he said quietly. "But I will not. Do you know why?" Hask trembled beneath him. "Because that is not who I chose to be. My planet taught me to survive. My people taught me to fight. But I chose to protect instead of destroy." He released Hask and stepped back, raising his hands peacefully to show he meant no further violence. The chamber was completely silent. Every eye was on the human who had caught a fleeing suspect without causing any harm. The human who had been accused of murder but responded with restraint. Now, Do-hyun said to the stunned tribunal, perhaps we should discuss what the Etheri military has really been doing. Perhaps we should talk about Admiral Vekris and his campaign to keep humanity isolated. Nari stared at him with wide eyes. You knew about all of this. I knew someone was coming for me, Do-hyun said. I just needed to wait until they made a mistake. He looked at the council with those calm, patient eyes. Humans are very good at waiting. It is one of the things our world taught us. How to be patient. How to endure. How to let our enemies think they are winning until the moment we choose to act. Director Hask was taken into custody. The investigation into Admiral Vekris began within the hour, and Kang Do-hyun, accused bomber and suspected monster, was released with a formal apology from the Academy Council. But as he walked out of the tribunal chamber, Nari noticed that his hands were shaking slightly. You were afraid, she said softly. Were you not? Do-hyun looked at her for a long moment. His smile flickered. I was afraid of failing, he admitted. I was afraid that no matter what I did, they would still see me as a monster. I was afraid that I would prove them right. But you did not. No. He looked up at the stars visible through the chamber's glass ceiling. Today, I did not. But the work is not finished. The galaxy still fears us. One good day will not change centuries of mistrust. So, what do we do? Do-hyun's smile returned, warmer and more genuine than before. We keep showing them who we really are. One day at a time. One act of kindness at a time. Until they cannot help but see the truth. It was a simple plan. Perhaps too simple. But as Nari watched the Academy students slowly approach Do-hyun to offer their support, she thought that maybe simple was exactly what the galaxy needed. The trial of Director Hask lasted 3 months. It was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings on thousands of worlds. They saw the evidence presented piece by piece. They heard testimony from Academy students and faculty. They watched recordings of Admiral Vekris giving orders to sabotage the human integration program. The truth was worse than anyone had imagined. For centuries, Deathworld species had been isolated from the rest of the galaxy. They were feared, hated, treated as barely contained threats. Earth had been quarantined not because humans were mindless beasts, but because they were too capable, too adaptive, too dangerous to the existing power structures. The Etheri military had built their entire empire on this fear. They positioned themselves as the only species strong enough to contain the Deathworld threat. They used this reputation to expand their influence, to demand resources, to control trade routes and political alliances. If humans became accepted, if they were seen as potential friends rather than monsters, the Etheri would lose everything. So they had lied. They had manufactured incidents. They had prolonged wars and destroyed diplomatic missions and killed innocent people, all to maintain the fear that gave them power. Kang Do-hyun testified before the Galactic Council on the final day of the trial. He stood at the center of the great chamber, wearing his Academy uniform for the last time. Representatives from hundreds of species watched him from their seats, their expressions ranging from fear to curiosity to hope. Earth is a crucible, he began. His voice was calm and clear, filling the massive room without effort. Our world forged us in fire, poison, and predation. We evolved to endure, to persist, to overcome. We developed muscles and reflexes and immune systems that could survive almost anything. We became stubborn. We became relentless. We became dangerous. He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. And yes, that makes us frightening. We are dangerous in the way a storm is dangerous, in the way the sea is dangerous. We carry the weight of 4 billion years of survival inside us. And that weight never fully goes away. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But we are also the species that invented medicine to heal strangers, Do-Yun continued. We created art to make each other feel less alone. We crossed the void between stars not to conquer, but to meet whoever else was out there. His eyes moved across the room, finding familiar faces. Tivik sat in the gallery, their scales bright yellow with pride. Professor Helix floated nearby, her thought form pulsing with approval. Nari watched with tears streaming down her cheeks. You feared the monster, Do-Hyun said. You saw our claws and our teeth and our relentless endurance, and you decided we must be contained. You listened to those who told you we were threats, and you never asked what we actually wanted. He smiled. That same warm, inexplicable smile that had confused the Academy from the very first day. We wanted friends. We wanted to belong. We wanted to take everything our cruel, beautiful world taught us and use it to protect something larger than ourselves. His voice grew stronger, filling with a passion that surprised even those who knew him best. That is what humans do. We find pack. We find family. And then we defend them with every ounce of savagery our evolution gave us. But it is directed, controlled, chosen. We do not fight because we enjoy destruction. We fight because we love something enough to protect it. The chamber was completely silent. I am not asking you to stop being afraid of us, Do-Yun said finally. Fear is reasonable. We are dangerous, and it would be foolish to pretend otherwise. But I am asking you to give us a chance to show you what we do with that danger. Give us the opportunity to be your allies instead of your enemies. Let us prove that the monster in the dark can also be a guardian at the gate. He bowed deeply, a gesture of respect from old Earth culture. That is all I have to say. The vote was held 1 hour later. Earth's quarantine was lifted with a 78% majority. 2 years passed. The Academy had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible before. Human students were no longer rare. There were dozens of them now, integrated into every program and department. Some were soldiers learning diplomacy, like Diane had been. Some were scientists sharing Earth's unique knowledge. Some were artists, bringing strange new beauty to galleries that had never seen human creativity before. Do-Hyun graduated with the highest honors the Academy could bestow. His thesis on predatory altruism, how Deathworld, psychology enables interspecies bonding, became required reading at universities across the galaxy. On the day of the graduation ceremony, Tivik found him on the observation deck one last time. You never stopped smiling, the young Ethori said. Their scales had darkened with maturity, but their eyes still held the same eager curiosity they had shown on that first day. Even when everyone feared you, even when they accused you of murder, even when the entire galaxy was watching you testify. Why? Do-Hyun was quiet for a moment. On Earth, he said, we have an old expression. Kill them with kindness. It means you respond to hostility with warmth until they have no choice but to see you as you really are. But you must have been afraid sometimes. You must have felt the pressure. Of course I was afraid. Do-Hyun looked at Tivik with sudden, startling honesty. I was afraid of failing. Afraid of proving them right. Afraid of being the monster they expected me to be. He shook his head slowly. But fear is just information. It tells you what matters. What you do with that information, that is the choice that defines you. What will you do now? Do-Hyun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the light of known space, other worlds waited. Other species struggled against the same isolation that Earth had faced. Other beings were called monsters simply because their planets had taught them to be strong. There are other death worlds out there, he said. Other species that have been rejected because they are too much. Too strong. Too clever. Too strange. His smile sharpened into something like determination. Someone needs to show them they are not monsters either. Someone needs to help them find their place in the galaxy. That sounds dangerous. It probably will be, but that has never stopped humans before. He turned to face Tivik fully, and for a moment, the young Ethery saw everything. The soldier, the student, the friend, the guardian. All of the pieces that made up this strange, smiling being from a world that should have destroyed him. "Thank you," Tivik said suddenly. Do-Hyun raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For proving them wrong. For showing me that the stories I heard as a child were lies. For being my friend when everyone else was afraid." Do-Hyun's expression softened. He reached out and placed a hand gently on Tivik's shoulder. "Thank you for being brave enough to give me a chance." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars turn slowly beyond the window. And Tivik understood something profound. The scariest thing about humans was not their strength. It was not their reflexes or their endurance or their predatory instincts. It was not the violence coded into their genes by millions of years of survival. The scariest thing about humans was their hope. They came from a world designed to kill them, and they responded by dreaming of peace. They inherited claws and fangs and nightmares, and they used them to protect. They walked into rooms full of beings who feared them, and they smiled until the fear turned to friendship. That was the mystery of Earth. That was the truth of the Deathworld beast who sat in the classroom, smiled at strangers, and quietly changed everything. And somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between stars, other monsters were waiting to be shown the same truth. Kang Do-Hyun was going to find them. He was going to bring them home.